Hello everyone. So it's great to be here with Jordan and to introduce this session together. So it's honestly a true pleasure to have this chance to just discuss with a friend and a former partner in crime, Joe. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure again to have this chat, discuss about the past stuff that we did together, and hopefully try to convey some lesson learned. Basically, thank you again.
Awesome. So the topic of discussion today, and we want to have this chat as a very informal one. So no taboo. We'll be very transparent. So please ask any questions that you want to ask to founders. The topics we will discuss is mostly about fundraising in the eyes of founder. So we are going to cover equity funding from pre-seed to Series C, because this is the only experience that we have together. Post types of funding, this is something we will still need to discover. We will discuss alternative funding options for startup. There is not just equity funding. And so just, before to start this discussion, let's maybe introduce ourselves. So I will start. My name is Rodolphe, or Rod. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spendesk. I'm the happy host of the summit. So I'm not going to reintroduce Spendesk, but I'm very happy to welcome Jordan today. So Jordan co-founded Spendesk with me and then left to create another company called Defacto. And Jordan, I'm giving you the mic to introduce yourself and what Defacto is doing.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. So as you mentioned, I'm now a happy co-founder at Defacto with another fintech. So previously, I joined Rodolphe and Guillaume at Spendesk. It was in mid-2016 when we bootstrap all the things. I left Spendesk about 2 years ago, in mid-2020. We were post-Series B. We were about 200 people in the team. And I was super happy of the path that we've done together. Since then, I guess that Spendesk grew pretty well. So you're going to tell us more about that. And then so we decided to launch Defacto. We are 3 co-founders and now a team of 16 people. So it's another fintech. The apple does not fall too far from the tree. I thought that I would, after Spendesk, capitalize on a few lessons learned or earned, I don't know. And build Defacto. So we are basically providing a credit API to deliver embedded lending to solutions and platforms, so that SMBs, which is a target that we start to know well, can access instant and fair access to short-term financing. And hopefully we'll maybe work with Spendesk in the near future to offer these new financing solutions to SMBs in Europe.
Yeah, this is clearly some kind of feature we would like to offer to our customers. So that's something we are discussing. So the first topic we wanted to address is just first is a share of experience on common fundraising that we had together at Spendesk, and starting with the history of the seed, and then Series A, and potentially Series B, Series C. So that's the first topic where we can discuss together about sharing these common memories. Then we will discuss about your own experience at Defacto, Joe, that you've been very successful in raising your pre-seed, seed, I think, Series A also.
Yeah, Series A, it's called Series A.
Series A. And then we'll discuss more about late stage financing, what type of financing for startup, depending of the different stage, or alternate one. Feel free to ask us any question during or to interrupt us during, again, making this discussion more, again, very, very informal and very transparent. Just more having a discussion than a formal talk. So if we remind, the status of Spendesk when we raised our first. So the history of Spendesk first is particular because we started the company with a startup studio called eFounder. So eFounders was basically the first pre-seed investor for Spendesk, and for the initial year we didn't have to go to funding. Then when we had already a product, around 100 of first customers, that's when we went to the market and to raise our seed funding. We raised 1.5 million euro, and I will share more about this story. 1 year later, we raised our Series A with Index Venture, leading this round of 8 million euro. 1 year later, so it was basically mid-2019, we raised our Series B, again, led by Index Venture, of 35 million euro. Then COVID came, we raised an extension of our Series B, welcoming 8 roads on board of 15 million euro. And again, 1 year later, 2021, we raised 2 rounds at Spendesk, one of Series C of 100 million euro that have been extended, so led by General Atlantic, that have been extended by another 100 million euro, making us reach the unicorn valuation led by Tiger Global. So on the first, my memories on the first, seed round, so back in 2017, it was a hard one, honestly. I started to go to venture capitalists. We started to go to venture capitalists, and honestly, no one believed on the business. No one believed on the mission we had at Spendesk to really decentralize spending across the company. And we spent, I remember, like 2 months of efforts trying to pitch investors, having a product, having customers that were using our product and being very happy with, and we could not get any significant term sheet during this time. And we decided to pivot our approach and to stop going to funds, but just targeting angels. And we raised our round in 3 weeks. So it went very, very quick with 30 business angels, among which some of our customers that put money in the company. What do you remember from this period, Jordan?
No, I remember that it was a very troubled times, like pitching the vision, pitching the early days of the usage of the product, pitching the roadmap. I do remember that it was very hard, and yeah, it was kind of pretty hard to get the confidence of VCs, and they were. I think at that time there was not that many fear of missing out among investors, so they would all be more patient, and most of them were in mode like, okay, it's good what you're doing, it's promising, but let's see like 2 to 3 months of usage before we can position ourselves. So I definitely think that your call to go and meet some business angels with maybe a higher propension to take risk was definitely a good call. When I compare to the first round that we did with Defacto, so we did a pre-seed round of 3 million euro in mid 2021. Sorry, there's a question.
Yeah, there is a question on what exactly made you decide to target angels versus VCs, and we'll come back then to your experience at Defacto. Honestly, for us at the beginning, we were like thinking, okay, it was going to be good to have VCs because they will potentially have more experience to help us in the early stage, and potentially we'll have a deep pocket to follow on later on. For us, in the case of Spendesk, which was a product, again, that is really a new way of doing things, so we had to evangelize our market. I think it was not the right choice. So what made us move to angels funding was really the time and effort. Basically, we were spending like 2 months in roadshow, pitching, etc., and defocusing us on what is really essential to me at this time, which is basically ensuring that you're building the right product that solves the problem and building the right business for your company. And all these efforts compared to basically the outcome and what we need to continue to develop was too high. And when we switch our approach saying, but we don't need VCs right now. And honestly, also the cap table that we had, because we had eFounders on our cap table, made things harder for seed VCs at that time. But it was still, it was interesting to see how VC back in 2017 who are not looking at the same thing that they are now looking when they invest in seed. Sometimes you are expected to already show unit economics at scale where you're just really in the early stage. So this is the kind of feedback we on the market. When we switched, and particularly with angels being people who use their product and got the value on our product and how much it was transformative in the company, the difference of timing between the efforts we put on the VC and the angels ones was just incredible, because in 3 weeks we gathered 1.5 million euro and we were done. So it was way more simpler. So tell me about on your seed round, 5 years after, or 4 years after, what all things have moved on the market.
Yeah, so at Defacto we managed to close a pre-seed of 3 million euro in mid 2021, which at the time of the closing I thought was completely incredible compared precisely to the experience that we lived at Spendesk. So I think there's a few lessons here. Is that first one, the French VC market is more mature. So basically you have like larger ticket sizes, higher valuation even at pre-seed, and that's because actually the seed investors know that there are going to be a higher probability of upside, and that's because the market is maturing. But also I think there's a second point, is that I think being a second-time founder, this is something that I really sold, to be honest, to VCs, and I think it worked quite well. So that's something that basically at pre-seed people are looking at the team, and having the some people that have a bit of experience in bootstrapping startup. I think it's valuable for VCs. And last thing, it was at the end of the third wave of COVID. So actually the market was completely drowned with liquidities, and we saw a number of like super high round from like mid 2021 to mid 2022, and especially on the early stage side. The second thing with our round, so we have it with two I'd say early stage VC firms plus a bunch of business angels, so about 20 business angels among and Rodolphe is one of them. So very happy to have you in the team in some ways. And that's actually a lesson from Spendesk, is that business angels can be of a tremendous value apart from the money that they bring in the sense that they bring expertise, field expertise, experience in building and scaling businesses, introductions, network, etc. So at Defacto, it took us like 2 weeks to close the round with VCs, and then like 2 months to really handpick, I'd say, because we had the opportunity to really choose the business angels that we wanted to work with, to choose the business angels that would bring us the most value. So, for example, we have on board people with like a huge credit experience, some regulation experience, obviously with you, some fintech experience and potential customers. And for us, that was, I think, a game changer. And as of today, our first like 20 business angels are still providing us tremendous value. So we're very, very lucky to have them on board.
And how do you, because on if we remember our Spendesk experience, I was leading this process and then exchanging together on the strategy, etc. But then at Defacto, you had to lead this process. How did you feel as a founder on the difference between on this experience?
I guess the pre-seed one that we did was very quick to lead, in the sense that we haven't done like a roadshow, and we met with VCs that we have a great fit with, but that was not true for our second round, which was like a Series A of 15 million euros that we raised with Northzone, and I kind of led this I'd say process, in the sense that I was doing all the first calls with VCs, and at the end of the funnel kind of dealing with the legal negotiations, like all the lawyers and stuff. That was, I think, one of the most stressful parts that I lived in the past 10 years. And at that time where you at Spendesk, you were leading all of this, I think I really didn't how do I say measure all the work that it was to kind of once you get the first term sheet, you're like, okay, we are the king of the world, but it's still the beginning of the hassle that you need to align all the stakeholders on really the legal details, etc. You know that you're paying a daily, hourly fees to lawyers, so you need to align people quickly. I'm a bit paranoid, so until the day it's closed, it's not closed. And especially when we did our Series A with Defacto, it was during it was at the beginning of the Ukraine-Russia war, so you never know what's going to happen. So until it's not closed, it's never closed. So to me, it was a very stressful process that I didn't live in this way when I was at Spendesk. I assume that either it was much more simple, which I doubt, or you took a lot of pressure on your shoulders that I was not aware of.
And thinking about the different fundraising event that you have, so obviously on seed and Series A, the founder does everything. I'm thinking back particularly on our audience here, who are finance leaders, so that's CFO that we don't have in the early stage. How do you see, for example, on Defacto next round, as you can start building your organization and particularly your finance organization, what do you expect from your first finance leader in your company regarding fundraising for the next stages?
Wow. So that's a good question. Actually, the finance part at Defacto is really like, I'd say, a whole business unit in a sense, since at Defacto, basically, we are lending money to SMBs, but we need to borrow this money from somewhere. So we actually have like huge financial, I'd say, challenges to kind of first find some capital to finance our growth and ability to build the product and grow, etc. And second, kind of finance all the warehousing stuff and build all the pipeline to kind of draw debt from like institutional investors to be able to deliver it to our customers. So we basically already have a team and someone in charge of this to kind of really find the right debt partners. And then I guess one of the challenges is going to kind of like we did for our Series A, it's to align the timing. There's a great, I think, learning here, especially on the VC side, it's timing, in a sense that for our Series A, we kind of align the timing of our equity round with the first debt round, which for us is key. And I think we're going to try the same for later rounds, basically.
We've got a question from the audience. How did you decide it was time to finally hire your first finance person in the company? What were the key metrics indicator you used to make the decision? That's a good question. On your end, Jordan, do you have an answer to that? I'm thinking to mine.
Oh yeah, I mean, the business model of Defacto is such that we hired our finance person. Kind of, it was the second hire in the company. And then we hire another, I'd say, person specialized in debt financing. It was our 10th employee, but I guess it's very specific to the business. Second, I think, I mean, you tell me, but in SaaS, I think the first finance role is really about having, I think, the right dashboards and the right KPIs to kind of track both the usage of the product and also the correlation of the usage and the revenues, and kind of set up the right tooling to automate as much possible all the corporate finance stuff. In a sense that when you're still early, I guess that with the fundraising in the pocket, you have a sufficient cash to kind of have some like 1 to 2 year runway. So I guess optimizing cash resources is not a topic, but optimizing processes and how to kind of pilot it is.
It is exactly for us. We hired our first CFO. It was just post Series B, so it's quite pretty late stage, or just at the moment of the Series B. Whereas it was really the moment when we started to structure and mature our organization. At first, I had the chance. So on my background, I've been a former entrepreneur. I've been creating a company once. So the early stage finance discipline is something that fortunately I had as an experience and I could manage by outsourcing obviously most of the accounting capabilities of the company. We wanted to bring our CFO in when we started to say, okay, now we are getting more complexity. We're opening subsidiaries in multiple countries. And we have to start having this rigor, this discipline, and scaling our financial process to what is required for example, the next stage of funding or for the stage of the company. To us, and this is maybe also something I'd like to add, is how different are the different fundraising events. Clearly, raising a seed funding or a Series A is very different from the experience we had raising our Series C. The investors are not the same. What they look like is not the same. The metrics, KPI, the expectations towards unit economics is not the same. So for me, at each stage, it's very important to think, okay, what will be required, and particularly in the early days of startup, what basically you're fighting after survival. Every day can be just, you're still continuing to live or just you're done. You have to make your infrastructure ready to match with what will be expected when you need to raise much more capital. And for us, the big difference was between our Series B and Series C. 35 million euro on Series B and then 100 million euro on Series C. The expectations in terms of rigor, in terms of structure of our finance team were clearly not the same.
And speaking of this, like the latest fundraising, which I didn't have the chance to live with you, how did you live this the later fundraising and the unicorn status?
That's a good question. I think there is similarities on every funding event. The similarities I see on the role of the founder. The first one is clarifying and the ability to explain really the vision that you've got for the company, and this is something that you always do and you're expected to do. I mean, selling how you like the world to change with your company. But then on the different roles on the funding events, you start having sharing responsibility. Whereas in the early days, you're doing everything as a founder, then you start having a team that helps you, that supports you, and then bring also discussions with the investors. The maturity of the model that you have to show at Series C is obviously very different at seed round, where basically you've got a first product, first customers, and that's just selling your team. But now you've got history, you've got performance on the different markets. You have the ability to provide them with a forecast, with a commitment on where you want to go. So it's all about how you move from something that is very ambiguous and uncertain in the early stage to something that starts to be very predictable, saying, okay, if you invest €1 in my company, this is the potential outcome that you can get later on. So this process of Series C was very, very different, as you can guess, than the early ones. So in terms of work, in terms of preparation obviously on our pitch deck, but also preparation on all the underlying models that were behind that. The due diligence process was clearly not the same. You start having post-Series B heavy due diligence on the business. So that's why it's important that you hire the right person and you start working on the right project to structure your finance, legal, and HR organization, because everything will be digged on. And the negotiations on the contract, on the term, particularly about we say that, but the responsibility and the engagement, that you have a very clean audit and due diligence process to make sure that you're not putting yourself or the company at risk. But then, to me, the experience to live as a founder, I'm always looking forward rather than backward. So it's always a new experiment where I can learn, which I find super, super exciting.
And how
I think we've got some questions from the audience, Joe.
Yeah. But first, before that, how did you kind of experience the 1 billion term sheet? Because I remember in the early days in 2016, like when we were targeting being the unicorn, it appeared to be so far away, and at the end of the day, it was only after like 6 years ish.
But I agree. It's something, when you start, it's something that seems unachievable, but it's a target. That's kind of a North Star that you get, saying, okay, if we can build $1 billion company, that would be awesome. But again, it's like when you hike in the mountains, at first the summit seems so far, but then you hike and it gets closer and gets closer. And then you start seeing that there is even a bigger summit behind the one that you were climbing on. So that's kind of, how I am feeling on that is, wow, we did that. That's incredible. But feeling super excited on what we are going to achieve next. And I think that's an important thing for a founder and for an entrepreneur, because it's all about getting the energy of really thinking that every day is really a new day for your business, for company, and raising your ambition over time. And again, this is a unique chance that we have to reach this stage and to have the ability to continue to develop the business to the next stage, which is something that very few companies can do, have the chance to do. So I feel very blessed.
That's cool. I really like your comparison with the summits of the mountain, and that's actually there's a picture of the Mont Blanc that I took when we were in the dome of Goûter. I was like, oh, this is so far away. I did not manage to reach the top, by the way. But yeah, there are two questions from the audience regarding like fundraising stuff. So the first one is necessary soft skills to ensure successful funding rounds. To me, I think there's to very summarize, I think there's two types of founders. There are like the visionary ones who are really like selling, we're going to change the world stuff. And they are more like pragmatic ones who are selling great business opportunities. I would believe that, so in the first one, I think the soft skills is really like awesome storytelling, I'd say being able to really touch the emotional aspects of the emotional parts of the audience, and especially of the VCs, ability to master, I think, the timing of the relationship, to start creating a bit of excitement, then FOMO, etc. I think it's very like seduction soft skills. And then there's the second one, I would say people that are a bit more like down to earth, pragmatic, that convey, I guess, confidence in their expertise. I'd say like smart expert people who manage to kind of convince people from a rational standpoint that the opportunity is going to have a positive return. And I kind of so to me, on my experience, I've kind of noticed that when we were pitching Defacto for our Series A, we started discussing with a bunch of US VC firms, and then we understood that basically, again, it's a very generality, but I think it's a bit of true. The US VC firms really are buying kind of very long-term visions and very like world-changing companies. I was pitching Defacto and kind of have some kind of path, some kind of pitch to justify a $1 billion valuation company. But then the US VCs would ask me, okay, but how do you do to become like a $100 billion company? And I'm like, let's see how it goes. And so then we understand that basically we were not the right fit for these for the US VCs at our stage and and with our current pitch. And we then decided to kind of I'd say change a bit of strategy and pitch more to European VCs and French VCs who are a bit more kind of I would say down to earth, not in a bad way, but in a more like realistic way. And we had a much bigger success rate in our pitch. So I think one lesson that I learned from that is that one, we need to understand which soft skills we have and where we feel the more confident, either in storytelling, like a huge changing the world stories, or storytelling great business opportunities, etc. And then I guess target the VCs accordingly. So for us, we understand after a few weeks of roadshow and of no's, that we had a better fit with European VCs.
I think I totally agree with you. I've seen these two types of founders, amongst friends or other entrepreneurs, etc. It's also interesting to point that the winning soft skills may depend of the period. So I'm clearly the second type of founders. I'm an introvert person. I'm more into the numbers. I'm more into the logic. So my plan tends to be very into the numbers. Rather than really selling a story. I remember that in 2021, when the market was super hot, this is feedback I got from VC saying, you seem to be very straight, very good at execution. We've got strong confidence, but we are missing this sparkle to make me dream. And again, it's just a question of style or a question of your skills of storytelling. But at that time, it seems that the market was over-indexed towards founders that were just selling a story and then we don't care about the execution. Whereas now, where the market has shifted, it's like, okay, everyone is coming to, okay, oh, these guys are very sound. Their business is very sound. The unit economics is very sound. So it's interesting to see how the market shifts depending of the macroeconomic environment.
I think there's another interesting question again on fundraising process regarding like what do we expect of a CFO?
Yeah, to me, again, it depends of the different stage on when your CFOs is here, and it depends. Coming back to the transition with your question, Jordan, it depends of what's the complementarity do you want to have with the founder. So on the first point, the ownership of fundraising, and obviously and what are the soft skills from your CFO? Yeah, the ownership of the fundraising is going to move, transitioning from the founder to the CFO. On the life of the company, more and more. For example, at Spendesk, this is on the funding investors relationship. This is clearly a mission of the CFO, but in the early days, this is not what interested VCs or investors. What interested VCs or investors is to have this relationship with the founder because they are more buying a vision, they are more buying a team, they are more buying a capacity to execute. So the storytelling parts are potentially more important than the numbers. Actually, you don't have any numbers because it's the early days. As the company mature, you need to have, for me, that's on the CFO part to really build the equity story of the company and sell this equity story. So that's his ownership to create this relationship and to prepare the next funding event. And then the founders then comes in the process, but not talking about all the numbers, etc., but talking about, again, more about the vision, what we are going to, how the product is going to evolve, what's the plan, but at a very high level perspective. So what I expect from the CFO, and again, it depends on size company, but what I expect from the CFO today is really to clearly take ownership, build the funding strategy, when, how, with which means, and where I can delegate, and where I can refocus my time on something that because I've got today someone in the company that I believe will be much better than I am to raise funds at this stage.
And when do you think this ownership of the fundraising process is transitioning from CEO to CFO? I'm quoting another question from the audience.
I think so again, it depends of the skills. And you can have depending of what kind of finance leader you bring in the company at the different stage. For example, if you bring in the early days a CFO that will be where the mission will be really to set your finance infrastructure, and someone that is potentially being not much in terms of soft skill, having selling soft skills, selling storytelling soft skills, etc., it will be difficult for them to build this process. Depending on the soft skill or finance leader, sometimes they're just better than the founder to do this job and to tell the story of the company and to sell the story of the company. So here it's more about, okay, what's complementarity that you have. The second thing, it depends on your business. We tend to say Series A, Series B, Series C, but it depends on every startup. You've got startups that are going to raise the Series B or the Series C already with very few numbers because, I don't know, the traction is so high or the market there is very hot, etc. Other startups start their Series A where they've got already a lot of histories. The business has been bootstrapped, so the skills and the kind of investors you're going to talk may be different. I think there is no golden rules here, unfortunately. To us, this shift is happening. On our Series C, I was still leading the process. However, the CFO was leading all the due diligence and the financing, all the due diligence process. The next funding rounds for Spendesk, the ownership will clearly change to Julien than to me.
Okay. Cool. You will have more time to travel.
Or to develop the business. There is another thing we could have discussed, Joe, and particularly with your expertise at Defacto. We've been discussing a lot about equity funding, which seems, for many startups or many founders to be kind of a graal. We need to get to our Series A, we need to get to our Series B, etc. However, there are many different alternative ways of funding, and let's discuss as a founder when should a founder goes to VC or BA, particularly in the early stage, or what kind of alternative funding do you see?
So to me, if I would try to summarize very from my small finance knowledge, there are multiple I'd say objectives to funding, from the most short-term one to the most long-term one. There is one really funding operations, so funding COGS, funding account receivable, account payables, etc. And for that, the main solutions is short-term financing, and I really believe that taking a cut of the equity of the capital of a company to finance the daily operation is a bad way to manage reserves of equity. In a sense that there are a bunch of solutions like factoring, which you are trying to disrupt, and at that part, short-term financing is the good way to go. Then I guess there are some more financing for investments with kind of a predictable cash flows or ROIs, I want to buy a restaurant, or I want to invest in a machine, etc., where I can kind of produce a business plan with I'd say high level of confidence. And for that part, I guess that credit from banks is definitely the best options. And lastly, is really funding for growth or land grab, or much more blurry initiatives, much more strategic initiatives that we cannot quantify for sure the outcomes. And there, so I guess that funding for these finalities, the riskiest one, hence equity is the good solution. And then you have multiple types of equity funding. I guess if you have a business that only needs a small growth at the beginning, then I guess maybe fundraising from friends and family or a bunch of business angels could be just enough to kind of help you bootstrap the business. But if you are in an opportunity where you need to inject a lot of cash to either outgrow some kind of competitions, or really if you are on a kind of a first mover advantage, then obviously I think VC funding is the only way. Why is that? It's because if you don't do it, then some competitors will do. And then you will be outgrown by the competition. So to summarize, if the opportunity is to do some kind of a land grab on a very niche topic, I'd say equity fundraising from like friends and family is enough, but if the market is broader, then I think there's no choice but to go on VC. And last thing, we started experiencing some like there's a new kind of product that is more like the venture debt stuff, and that's actually getting grabbing credit lines from banks on top of some equity fundraisings. And that's because banks are kind of reassured that you have sufficient runway, etc., that you manage to convince investors that they are willing to take an additional risk on your side.
And you personally, so I know that for Defacto, you have to raise debt just to operate your business, because you're lending money. However, in your funding round, did you also raise debt to fund the business? This is something we did at Spendesk. On every round, we leverage our equity round with some debt financing. Unfortunately, most of the banks in the early stage are not, for the types of business that Spendesk is in, we're not looking into it. But for us in France, we had the Banque Publique d'Investissement, the BPI, and on every funding, we leverage the BPI to have an extra additional funding through debt financing, which creates more leverage on our equity funding.
Yeah, exactly. That's the venture debt product. That's actually debt that can be raised at the company level for, I'd say, business operations that usually occur just after a fundraising process. So we try to do that with Defacto twice. So we had 2 loans from the BPI that are a bit small, I would say. But that's mainly because I think that compared with the stage of the company, where we are pretty early stage, we managed to raise pretty decent equity round. Hence, it's I'd say that banks are judging that the business today is too risky for them because we don't have like sufficient data to prove any predictability or whatever as of today. But in the coming months, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and this is something that I think the audience knows potentially better than us. But my learning here, and particularly, when you build a business with ambition, where you have to go fast and the market is very deep, unfortunately, at the early stage, you don't have a lot of options if you want to fund this risky growth. Even if the best business are the bootstrapped one, from an equity perspective, from a founder perspective, and from a business perspective. But as the business mature, and we start seeing this with Spendesk, we've got more and more options to be able to fund ourselves. Venture debt can be one, debt is also one, because we start having different numbers. Revenue financing is a new one that starts to emerge that can be very interesting for recurring revenue models, and it's interesting to see that the more, in a way, and the more you grow and the more you succeed, the more options you've got in your hands. Whereas, again, and particularly for the French ecosystem, it's still the early days that are the harder, where there is a need to fuel and to finance this part of the business.
Well, exactly. I mean, we at the end of the day, the job of the banks is to take risks, but they don't like to take risk. And we saw at Defacto that basically raising even a small credit line with banks as an early stage company is a very painful process. Can take like from 2 to 3 months. And at the end of the day, you manage to get a credit line that is not going to kind of change the way you're doing your business. And that's why we thought that there was an opportunity for us as a company to kind of offer very easy access to short-term financing and basically bear the risk that the banks don't want to anymore. And maybe to transition, we can just like have a few words on the macro context. I would love to have your view on the fact that so today it seems that some I'd say that the macro context is a bit more tense with like the inflation rates, the fact that central banks are raising interest rates, the fact that there is some pretty cool companies like top fintech companies like Klarna with a leading buy now pay later solution that was funded in Sweden, whose valuation decreased from like 40 plus billion to like 8-ish billion, but still it's a pretty decent valuation. But yeah, how do you see impacts? How do you see this context impact your business basically?
For Spendesk, we are lucky enough to have raised capital at the right time. So for the moment, we are not fundraising again. So we are in this lucky position when we've got an extending runway and we've got a lot of time in front of us. The market was crazy in 2021 for sure, and it was a good thing for. We had the chance to seize this opportunity. I'm more. Obviously, when you don't have this luxury of runway right now, it's tough. If your unit economics, if your business model needs to be fixed, it's going to be tough for businesses to continue to finance, and particularly at the late stage. I think on the early stage, from what I'm observing on the market, there is still a lot of money. And again, you don't need to prove a lot to raise capital at seed stage.
There is a lot of money, but the valuations are going to drop. If you raise a seed round with a too high valuation, then it's going to be tough to. And if you spend that money, if you burn too high, it's going to be tough to keep that valuation if you haven't proved like product market fit or early days of scalability.
I agree, and I think this is maybe one, because we're already almost out of time, but maybe one of the closing words, we see that there is a final question about what mistakes did you do in your fundraising. At Spendesk, we've been concerning valuation. We try to be, kind of conservative of the types of valuation we were asking, again, because we are building this business for the long term, and I don't like to want to be in a position when we've been too greedy too early, and then we had to have a downturn, which could be dramatic on the equity story, dramatic for the teams. A lot of everyone in the team has equity at Spendesk, so once you start having all this done right, it's not the smart move to get for your team and for your company. And one mistake that I did, so this is something I realized later in the process, but for example, during seed, and potentially this is one thing that makes this process with VC unsuccessful. I was really targeting a high valuation too soon, rather than as a founder saying, okay, the valuation may be lower, but then when you start having as soon as you start having a yes, it's easier to get other yes. And then you've got some competition bringing in some FOMO, and you can raise your valuation. When you start too high, you're just getting no's. And transforming a no to a yes, that's very, very hard. So my recommendation and tip, so this is a mistake I made on the first round, but I didn't make afterward, is more to say, okay, don't be greedy first, get people interested in your business, and then try to see what the market can offer, rather than just starting too high and just getting outside of the market. What's your mistake, Joe?
It's a very, very small thing. I'm obsessed with décision unanime des associés. It's basically when there are a bunch of events and we had like multiple ones at Defacto where you need to get the signature of all the shareholders. And when you start having like many business angels, I think one thing that you want to test for your future business angels is their ability to click on DocuSign very quickly, because there's always someone that is missing, and you're like, that was driving me crazy. It's super low, but there's like so much dependency on these DocuSign signatures that I did not expect it, that I would really try to syndicalize as much as possible.
Well, thank you, Joe. I think we are. I think we are already almost on time. So to the audience, I hope that this conversation was helpful. If you've got some follow-up question, you can reach out to me at rodolphe@spandesk.com. Joe, what's the right way to follow up with you?
Well, LinkedIn, email, whatever, phone. I'm available. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it was valuable.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Rod.
Bye-bye.
Bye, see you soon.